Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, and today I'm going to give you my way too early NBA award picks. We are still months away from the beginning of the 2026 NBA season. These are subject to change, but just here in the moment, after seeing the roster moves that have happened this summer, looking at the landscape of the league, here's where I think all the major awards will land if you ask me today. That's MVP, DPOY, Rookie of the Year, Most Improved Coach of the Year, every single one of those. I'll even give you Finals MVP while we're at it. I'll also give you some other guys that I thought about, maybe some interesting storylines we could see with certain awards, things like that. And of course, I want to know who your way too early NBA award picks are right now in all the major categories. Let me know in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe if you enjoy. Let's get into the list. Let's start off with Defensive Player of the Year, and I'm going to be boring. I'm going to go with Victor Wembanyama. I know it's not fun in any way, but it's probably the right pick. Last year, he was guaranteed to win it. It was not even close, not even a conversation before his end of season was derailed and he didn't play enough games to qualify. Rookie year, he finished second place to Rudy Gobert, one of the best rim protectors in the history of the sport. Wemby is super due. He is going to win, I think, his first this year, the first of what will probably end up being a record amount of Defensive Player of the Years. It just feels like he's set to rattle off a lot of these. He blocks a million shots. He's the ultimate rim deterrent, even going inside the paint deterrent. He got better last year on the perimeter. He's getting more agile. He's getting stronger to deal with those big body bigs. I feel like the further we go into Wemby's career, the more likely it is that just nobody's able to score against the San Antonio Spurs. And really, I think the only thing that can stop Wemby from winning DPOY this season, the games played, yeah, that definitely is a factor, but assuming he plays enough, is that the Spurs last year were not a great defensive team. I think they ranked 19th around that pre-All-Star break. And so, do you give Defensive Player of the Year to a guy who's on a bottom half defense? Well, the answer was going to be yes, if he ended up playing enough games. And I do think the addition of like a Carter Bryant, another year for Stephon Castle, better other big options like a Luke Cornett, for example. I just think this team is going to be better defensively. Wemby is going to, again, be game breaking on that end, and he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. Again, it's not super sexy, but I think it's the right pick. Other options include like Chet Holmgren. I do think will put up a case if the Thunder are, again, one of the best defenses of all time and he plays enough games. Then I think him being the rim protecting anchor of that defense will probably get him some love. The only thing I think I'm concerned about is that, the Thunder of Alex Caruso and Lou Dort and all these great defenders, I think that will ultimately detract a little bit from some of his case, and he's not going to have the same absurd block numbers the way that Wemby does. But I do think Chet and Wemby are going to be towards the top of DPOY races for a while. I think Amen Thompson is probably going to get deep into that race as well. I think the next wing to win the award is going to be Amen. Obviously, Evan Mobley will again be in the conversation, and like a Jaren Jackson Jr., but I think this is Wemby's award. Next, let's do Sixth Man of the Year, and I'm going to go with DeAndre Hunter here. Last season, DeAndre Hunter finished fourth in Sixth Man of the Year voting. He was incredible both in Atlanta and in Cleveland. His touches went down when he went to Cleveland by a good bit, but he still gave them 14 points a night, 4.2 boards, while playing really solid defense and shooting 42.6% from three on over 5 attempts a game. That's ridiculous production from a guy coming off your bench. He only started 5 out of his 27 games there and was only playing 25 minutes. He was unbelievable last season. So he's got to stay on the court. He's been someone who's hardly played 65 games in a season in his career. But if DeAndre Hunter can be out there, I think he'll be phenomenal again for them in this Kenny Atkinson system. Another year getting acclimated, playing off of all this talent surrounding him. He's going to be featured, and I think he's going to thrive even more so now as well that Ty Jerome is gone, so some of those shots have opened up. They do have Lonzo Ball, but Lonzo is obviously a lot more of a playmaking first defensive guard, so I do think DeAndre Hunter will get a few more touches, and he should. He was ridiculous last year. Other candidates, Peyton Pritchard obviously could repeat, but I still think there's a world where Simons is dealt before the season, and so ultimately Pritchard is a starter, and of course voter fatigue is a thing. Naz Reid is the guy that I had here for a little bit, but I'm just not sure what the roles are going to look like in Minnesota as they're shifting pieces around. I do still think Naz will be great, but I think there is a path to DeAndre Hunter putting up better numbers than Naz Reid. Not to mention the fact that with Mike Conley getting up there in age, I just don't love the playmaking over there in Minnesota, so I think that could hurt Naz a little bit. Maybe a Karis LeVert in Detroit, but I don't know. I ultimately felt like Pritchard, Hunter, and Naz Reid were the three guys I felt the best about, and I think DeAndre Hunter's my pick. For Rookie of the Year, I'm going to be boring again. I'm just going to go Cooper Flagg. He's just too good. if you ask me. There is a lot of talent over there, which maybe hurts some of his numbers, but I just think defensively he's going to be so insane. They're going to need him to be productive offensively because they have no Kyrie Irving, so I think he's going to have the ball in his hands a good bit. They're going to let him run a little bit of point forward, which is going to be a fun experiment, and then defensively he's just going to be part of one of the best units in the league. So yeah, I mean, give me Cooper Flagg. Dylan Harper I thought about, but just with De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle there at the guard position, I feel like it's a little bit clogged, plus Wemby, who could take a big statistical jump, and a lot of other guys around them like a Devin Vassell and a Harrison Barnes. I just think there's a lot of productive players over there in San Antonio that's going to hurt his numbers a little bit. VJ Edgecombe, I mean, if the Sixers are super beat up like they typically have been recently, then I think he could get a lot of touches and he could win it, but I'm just crossing my fingers the Sixers are actually healthy, and that doesn't have to be the case. Trey Johnson feels like a potential bet, but I just also think there's a lot of guys in the Wizards that could take jumps, so that might ultimately bog down his numbers a little bit. I thought about Ace Bailey over there in Utah, but similar thing where there's a lot of young talents that I think could take a step forward, and Lowry still kind of being the guy over there. There are a lot of other rookies I could talk about all up and down the list, but I ultimately feel like it's going to be one of these like top 6, 7, 10 picks. Maybe Malawach goes crazy and ends up as the starting center for the Phoenix Suns, and maybe he wins it, but I think I feel the best about just going with the best player in the draft in Cooper Flagg. For most improved player, I'm going to go with Andrew Nembhard. This is one that I went really back and forth on. I was going to record this video like an hour ago, and I just couldn't settle on who I wanted to be my pick for MIP, but taking a look at the Indiana Pacers, no Tyrese Haliburton, no Miles Turner, a lot of shots have opened up. They need someone to be very, very productive, and I did think about Benedict Mathurin, but he already averaged 16 points in his career. I just don't know how high I can see him shooting. I mean, I could see him scoring over 20, but more so with Nembhard, who averaged 10 last year, I think he could jump up to like 17, 18 points per game. He's going to have to be the lead playmaker, so I could see the assist numbers jumping. He's a good defender, and I think if Indiana is even somewhat competitive in the Eastern Conference with him putting up something like those numbers, like a 17 and a 7 or an 8 or something like that with his defense, it's going to be hard to not give Nembhard a lot of consideration for the award. Plus, I do feel like there was a little bit of pushback this past season on top picks winning the award. Like, it didn't go to a Cade Cunningham like it felt like it could if it instead went to Dyson Daniels, who was also a top 10 pick, but wasn't like, you know, the consensus number 1 overall guy the way Cade was. So I do think with that pushback, Nembhard being a second round pick as opposed to Mathurin being a former 6 overall pick, I think that could also play a little bit into Nembhard's favor. So yeah, give me him over also like Amin Thompson, who I really thought about, but same thing. He was the 4th overall pick, and I do think Kevin Durant coming in could turn down his numbers a little bit. I still think the efficiency could jump, and he could be in DPOY talks, but I think it'll prevent him from maybe having this crazy supernova breakout like we think he could. Asar Thompson, I also thought about, like with Jaden Ivey too over there in Detroit. I think they've got a lot of guys in that camp. Also, Scoot Henderson, would love to see him win it. You know, I'm a big Scoot guy, but same thing. Like, he was the 2nd overall pick or 3rd overall pick a few years ago. I just don't see a world where Scoot really gets that type of consideration, even if he really pops off this year. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like the pushback on the definition of the award will lead to more like a guy like Andrew Nembhard winning it, who is my pick. Let's do Coach of the Year next. For this, I'm going to go with Jamal Mosley of the Orlando Magic. They feel like such an obvious team that has the chance to take a jump in this Eastern Conference. They went 41-41 last year, despite Paolo and Franz missing a majority of the season, and Jalen Suggs being down for a lot of it too. Those are their 3 best players. They didn't really play very much at all together, and they still went 500. Adding in Desmond Bane, another year of growth and development from Paolo and Franz, and getting back Jalen Suggs, they're going to be elite defensively. They've got, I think, still bringing a little bit more offensive talent, or maybe Paolo and Franz taking jumps just offset some of that, but I would be shocked if this team isn't, assuming they're healthy, right there for a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. I think if I had to pick today, I'd have them 2 or 3, and that feels like it's plenty enough to get Jamal Mosley Coach of the Year, and I think he's a really good coach, so I'd love to see him get that award. Other candidates I consider, like Ime Udoka is one of the first people that comes to mind over there in Houston, but they just won 52 games. I don't know how many more they're going to win. Like, they could win 60. They're like that capable of a team, but I think Orlando taking that big jump as opposed to the Rockets gaining 8 more wins would probably lean it over to Jamal Mosley. I think the Kevin Durant acquisition is going to overshadow his case a little bit. I could see a world where, like, the Clippers with their new additions, they stay somewhat healthy. They end up as a top 3-4 seed, and Tyronn Lue gets some consideration. Maybe David Adelman with the Denver Nuggets. Thomas Isolo, if the Grizzlies maintain, or I guess not maintain because they fell off at the end of the season, but if they jump back up in the standings a little bit. Jason Kidd, if the Mavericks go ahead and impress. I could see Mitch Johnson if the Spurs are this big elite team like some people think. Maybe Quinn Snyder with the Hawks. It does feel like an open field, but I feel pretty strongly that Jamal Mosley at the very least is going to be a heavy consideration. And ultimately, I am a believer in this Orlando Magic team, so he's my pick. For clutch player of the year, I'm going to go with Steph Curry. This one is so hard to predict. Last year, I think I went with Damian Lillard. You kind of just got to take a shot in the dark, be like, okay, this guy's clutch, and I think his team's going to be in close games, and probably a lot of those will be clutch scenarios, and I think he could play well and hit a couple of game winners. And I feel all that about Steph Curry. I mean, the Warriors played 35 clutch games this past year, so I imagine they'll be in a lot of those scenarios again. And he ended up with the 6 most clutch points, shot 37% from deep. And when Steph Curry is going off in the clutch and hitting game winners, it is loud. He has some of the best clutch highlights out of anybody, so I think that could also play into his favor a little bit. So yeah, give me Steph Curry, and then all the other usual candidates are contenders for this, like a Jokic or a Jalen Brunson and Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant now with the Houston Rockets. But there's also the thing with, like, you know, the Rockets, I think they're going to be really good. So how often are they even going to be in close games? Like, I know last year the Thunder were not in many close games. So some people are like, oh, could Shai win clutch player of the year? I'm like, we haven't played many clutch games. So it's a weird award to pick. Just give me Steph Curry. Next up, let's talk MVP. And I think it's going to, again, either be Shai or Jokic. They've been 1 and 2 the past 2 seasons. But this time I'm going to lean the Joker. And this is coming from a Thunder fan. I'd love to see Shai repeat. But I think, you know, Jokic is always going to have him in the box score numbers. The Thunder took that huge leap and won 68 games last year. I do think the Thunder can get pretty close to that or even win more next season. But I think the Nuggets are going to be a good bit better than 50 and 32. I feel like they have a good shot of winning 60 games. They've upgraded, and I think Jokic is again just going to be on an unbelievable level. Had arguably his best season last year if you take a look at the statistics. Again, voter fatigue is always a thing. Shai winning last year I think is going to play into Jokic's favor a little bit. So yeah, give me Nikola Jokic to go ahead and win his 4th MVP. I think he's got a great shot of doing so. At the absolute worst, he's going to finish top 3. There are some other candidates that are interesting, like a Giannis. I know a lot of people are going with him as this dark horse MVP, but I just personally can't quite get there. Not because of Giannis. I mean, he's unbelievable, and I think his numbers are going to be insane, carrying that Bucks team as much as he can, but I just don't think he's going to be able to carry them the way that he needs to compete with like Shai and Jokic, who are both also going to have insane box score numbers, but ridiculous team success too. I think the Bucks at the absolute peak, if I take a look at the roster, could be like the 6th seed. I think more so they're going to be a 7 or an 8 in this Eastern Conference, and I just don't think that's going to be enough. Luka is another guy who's always going to be there in that conversation when he's healthy. The reports are that he's losing weight, that he's motivated, and maybe that means he's going to come in, wreck house, and win his first MVP. But I just think it's hard for me to see him winning MVP on the same team as LeBron James. I just don't think it's going to go that way. I also don't think the Lakers are going to be that great this season. I don't think they're going to be terrible, but I don't think they're going to be anywhere near the success of, again, Shai and Jokic's teams out there in the West. If you ask me to pick today, I think the Lakers are like a 6 or a 7 seed. It's just ultimately not going to be enough. We could also talk about like Anthony Edwards, but I don't think he's quite to that level of player yet. Kevin Durant, maybe there's a world where the Rockets are insane and he's just carrying them offensively and they're like, hey, let's give KD another MVP this late into his career. But I just don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, I think it's going to be Shai or Jokic again. Honestly, a coin flip lean like because of voter fatigue and just the absurd box score dominance of Jokic. Like 55-45 in favor of him, or like 60-40. I think he's going to get his 4th MVP now that he's not trying to go back-to-back, but that it will just come down to Shai and Jokic. Real quick for exec of the year, I'll go with Raphael Stone. You add Kevin Durant, Dorian Finney-Smith, Clint Capella, re-up some guys on extended contracts. I think the Rockets are going to be top 3 in the West again next season, but look quite a bit better and feel like a scarier, more imposing threat than they were going into the playoffs last year. I think that's going to be plenty enough to get him the award. I mean, you could talk about like Jeff Weltman maybe of the Orlando Magic if they do take that huge jump after the Desmond Bane trade, but the KD one is just such a big deal. If the Rockets don't crash and burn, I feel very good about it being Raphael Stone. And finally, for Finals MVP, give me Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going back-to-back. The Thunder going back-to-back, winning the NBA Finals again. It was the 2nd youngest team to win the NBA Finals ever. Everybody was brought back. You've got an MVP level guy in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You've got 2 really good young supporting pieces and J-Dub, who is all NBA, all defense, and was the second option, dropping 40 in the finals, despite having a torn ligament in his hand. I think with another year built off of the hip injury from Chet, he's going to be a lot better next year. So many other young guys can improve, like a Casey Wallace and an Aaron Wiggins and an AJ Mitchell, and Nikola Jokic coming into the fold. Isaiah Hartenstein is still going to be really good. Like, this team is just loaded top to bottom. Great coaching, Mark Daigneault, a lot of assets for Sam Presti to play with if he feels like he needs to make improvements at the deadline. Like, I mean, I've glazed the thunder enough here in this channel. You don't need me to go into it more. They're the reigning champs for a reason, and they're the favorites according to basically every book out there going to next season for a reason as well. Other candidates, like, I mean, Nikola Jokic, the Nuggets could very well get it done. They're my second best team in the West, if you ask me. The Rockets, like, if Kevin Durant leads them there, then maybe him or an Alvin Thompson or a Şengün. The Cavaliers, like a Donovan Mitchell or an Evan Mobley. The Knicks, I guess, with like Brunson and Cat, like, there's a bunch of guys I could basically just go into who I think has a chance to win the NBA Finals, but I think the clear best answer right now is Shai. And with all that being said, those are my way too early predictions for who wins every major award next season. Again, would love to hear your thoughts on these. Who are some honorable mentions that I didn't bring up? And just because I didn't bring someone up doesn't mean I don't think they have a chance. They either just slipped my mind or this video is already long enough and I felt the need to cut some stuff. So let me know down below who you think are some honorable mentions, dark horses, things like that for these awards. Who are your picks? And what was your favorite and least favorite pick of mine? Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Again, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future uploads. I appreciate y'all. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say back.